why do I even need life insurance? And I think the subset of that question that we got was, with all the other insurance and financial pressures that I have to have car insurance, I have to have homeowners insurance. How do we elevate the necessity for life insurance? What would you give people as a headline of why it's so important?
It's only important if there are people in your life that rely on you financially that you care about. If you don't care about them, whether they rely on you or not, nothing I say is going to make any sense to you. There's no question about that. The other types of insurance that you mentioned, homeowners insurance or fire insurance, that's required. If you have a mortgage, your mortgagee is going to require that you prove that you continue to keep the coverage, because if the house burns down and you owe them $200,000 on the house, and it's not insured, they're never going to get paid back. So they require it. The law in pretty much all 50 states requires that you have some modicum of car insurance, some minimum amount of liability insurance. Life insurance is more about, first of all, there is a huge difference between those two types of insurance. The odds of your house burning down are roughly 1 in 1,200. We wouldn't think of not, even if you had your house paid off, you wouldn't think of not having it insured, even though the odds of it burning down are 1 in 1,200. The odds of dying, last I checked, are 1 out of 1. And so, since we are all going to die, we just don't know when. The question is, when we die, what legacy do we want to leave? If we die when we're young, that's the most tragic scenario. If we live a long, healthy life, and we die at 85, like my dad just died a couple of months ago, he had a great life. He had a good run, and no regrets, no big deal. Obviously, I'm sad to lose him, but at the end of the day, if you die young, not only have you left your family in a lurch, but the economic loss is just so incredibly huge. It's bigger than not insuring. And then we talked about losing a car, not having car insurance, big deal, whatever. You lost 20, 30 grand. To lose the rest of your life's income on behalf of your family is crazy. So that's why it's so important. It seems obvious to me. I've been doing this for 30 years, and we have roughly 200,000 clients, and we have death claims every single week, and I see what happens. And so far, we haven't had any surviving spouses or children or any beneficiaries of any kind come to me and say, demand to speak to the owner and say, what the heck did you sell my father or husband? This is crazy. It's $1 million. We're never going to be able to spend all this money. Can you please just give some of it back to maybe someone who needs it more than we do? That's never happened. I'm not expecting that to happen. So it's almost impossible, and I would say it's actually institutionally impossible to have too much life insurance. I know that sounds crazy coming from a guy who sells life insurance, and you can take it with an axe to grind if you understand. I have an axe to grind, and you can take it with a grain of salt if you like. But the fact of the matter is, the carriers will not sell you more than you need. They will not sell you more than they believe the economic value of your life is. So if you're buying it, it's not possible that it's too much. And the good news is, it's so dirt cheap these days. I mean, for young people in their 30s, it's 50 cents to $1 a thousand if you're reasonably healthy. I mean, it's so cheap, it's almost incomprehensible. If I had sat down with the 10 top life insurance executives in 1994, and I had said to them that, we know how cheap term insurance has gotten now that it's 1994, and if I were to tell them that the price of term insurance for, say, a 20-year level term was going to be 2/3 lower. So what cost $1,000 today, which I thought was amazing, by the way, in 1994, when it dipped under $1,000, I actually bought $3 million of coverage, thinking, oh my God, I better grab it now before the price goes back up. This is crazy cheap. Now what was $1,000 is now $350 or less if you're female, and so I am completely amazed. And yet, if I had sat down with those executives and said the price is going to be that cheap, they would have told me I'm crazy. They would say it's more likely that we'll all be living on the moon than life insurance will ever be that cheap, unless we find a cure for death. In other words, we find a way for people not to die, which hasn't happened. And we haven't had any medical breakthroughs since 1994. I mean, we've had medical breakthroughs. We haven't had any mammoth medical breakthroughs that are prolonging life and changing the mortality table that much.
Yeah, and I think it's a common misconception, and why people are hesitant, don't know what to ask, how to look, is that they think it is such an expense that they can't afford.
Interestingly, there's been some studies done on that, and the people tend to overestimate the cost of life insurance by a factor of 3 to 7, depending on their age. So people think it costs 3 times as much as it really does, or up to 7 times as much as it really does. And that's really tragic, because if they knew what it really cost, I think they'd be lined up from here to Alaska 5 wide to buy the stuff.
Plus the number of products that are available in every shape, size,
Yeah.
amount.
There are a
There's
lot of
something
choices.
for everyone.
There certainly are, and it's hard to fathom someone who legitimately needs life insurance, which is someone who has people depending on them and they have an income that's worth replacing. If they have both of those two things, then and they're reasonably healthy, life insurance is affordable. I mean, there are people that are truly uninsurable. I mean, they're so messed up, either from a health standpoint or a medical standpoint, that life insurance is complicated and expensive. But that's not usually the case, especially for young people.
And you